Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
I'm on? Well, I never heard a thing. Oh dear. Okay, I'm on. Okay, okay. I'm sorry. You know what? My head. I'm sorry. I'm glad I wasn't doing anything that I shouldn't be doing. I was checking email. Sorry, guys. That was a inauspicious beginning. There have been many. We'll add that to the list. Oh God, forgive me. I'm actually. Never mind. God. Does it ever get easier? I suspect not. I had too many inputs going on. I'm sorry. All right, enough. Hello? Let's pretend this is just starting. Why, hello there and welcome. Yet another debacle. It's a little after our normal starting time, and it's November 3rd. Wow. And it's like the best of all seasons. It's glorious autumn, and the temperatures are going to be like summer. Wow, geez. Nothing unusual here. Okay, so let me get my act together. I'm sorry. I think I mentioned this yesterday. My routine has been upended, and I am just. There's so much going on in this house, and I have not a lot of control. And so I'm sort of constantly, whatever. So I apologize in advance for anything that's going to happen within the next hour, and I apologize for that faltering intro. However, let's just jump in. Yesterday, a caller asked me a question that I falteringly answered. And the question was, he had heard that John Fetterman was a probation officer or something, and what the hell was John Fetterman doing before? And I said, the probation officer, good God, no, that's not true. He served on the parole board in his position as lieutenant governor. But the questioner wanted to know, why did he come to Braddock? He was not born there. It's not like people are breaking the doors down to get into Braddock. In fact, they're getting the hell out. It had been such a wonderful, thriving community. But that's like 100 years ago now. And something dropped right into my hands this morning that answers the question better than I could. I had said that I thought he'd come here to do some kind of, like domestic Peace Corps work in an underserved community, which is in fact true. I just didn't know what the work was. And today I saw a piece about, I think it was in the Huffington Post. And it was very interesting. And it was a long piece about Fetterman and Braddock. And it pointed out that many people in Braddock just think the world of him, and that he continues to live there with his family. The article also points out that there are also people in Braddock that don't think particularly well of him, and go into the reasons for all of that. They also explain that he doesn't use, he has very little power as the mayor. But let me just back up and see. I captured a little bit of this. He came in 2001. So it's a long time he's been there, obviously. He came in 2001. And he came, I guess, pretty much out of, that's like more than 20 years ago. And he came to do, as I suggested, work among disadvantaged people. And the Huffington Post article said that the work he was doing was, he set up a GED program, a program where people who had not graduated from high school could then get a diploma. And that is what he came to do. That is what, in fact, he did. And then two of his students were gunned down. And it was that tragedy that sent him into the political realm. He ran for mayor. And he won by one vote. And over time, he won over quite a few people in the city. The other issue is Braddock is an overwhelmingly black town, and here's a white guy. And there's still some, and it turns out a wealthy white guy, inherited wealthy white guy comes in, and all of a sudden he's the national face of Braddock and is touted as its savior. And there are some people unhappy with that scenario. But Fetterman is the kind of guy who uses the privilege of his wealth, which comes to him from his father's success, I believe in the insurance industry. He doesn't use it to buy fancy cars. He doesn't use it to, it was conspicuous consumption. He, and I find this laudable, has used his father's wealth, which his father gives to him willingly, because his father shares his values as well. And he takes that wealth and does good stuff with it. So the article in the Huffington Post is full of people telling stories of how he loaned them woman selling all her stuff out on the street because she, couldn't pay her bills. And she's telling him, please just buy some of this stuff. He said, I don't need any of this stuff. He said, let me just give you the money. And then when later years later, she tried to pay him back, and he, refused. And he said to her, look, I got a lot of money. I'd rather do this with, he wants to spread it out. That's fine. So he made friends in Braddock by, buying people gifts and kids' school supplies and and bikes. And then when he got elected mayor, it turns out that Braddock has a kind of structure in which the mayor really doesn't have a whole lot of power. He does oversee the police department, which is definitely some power. But in terms of getting anything done, that's all with the borough council. And he very quickly, as mayor, came to not to a good place with the council. And council, I believe, was overwhelmingly black, saw him pretty much as a interloper. And so what he did, and this also created some people saying he shouldn't have done it, he created a nonprofit with, again, his inherited wealth. And with that nonprofit, he did things just by his own fiat. He didn't have to ask anyone's permission. He bought properties. He subsidized development of underused buildings and places. He became this activist mayor, not by completely circumventing the community's political structure and by using his wealth. And, you can argue with what he did, but the fact is he didn't, I don't think, do much harm. You could also argue that some of it is sort of gentrified window dressing kind of stuff, and that the average person there wouldn't help much. But quite clearly the intent, my sense of him is he has a good heart. Oh, wait. Ha! He doesn't have a good heart. Literally, he doesn't have a good heart. Figuratively, I think the man has a good heart. But it was an enterprise that his nonprofit entered into that got him the national attention and got Braddock national attention. And that was in 2009. He agreed with Levi's, the jeans manufacturer. He agreed to let them use Braddock as a backdrop, as an ad campaign about American reinvention and, lifting yourself back up. And because this was done outside of the structure of the government of Braddock, even though it was the mayor's nonprofit that was doing it, Levi's paid more than $1 million, not to Braddock, but to Fetterman's nonprofit. And Fetterman turned around and took that million and did a whole bunch of stuff with it. He made a community, an urban farm where people could get fresh produce and grow it. He renovated the library, renovated a church, opened a community center. So it isn't nefarious, hey, Levi's, you give me the $1 million. No, he took that $1 million and did what he couldn't do as easily through the governmental structure. So I do, if you have access to, go to the whole article. It's interesting. It really is interesting. Talks a lot about the free store that Giselle, his wife, set up, and how, I mean, that's a wonderful thing. And she says she knew what it was like not to have when she was here as an undocumented immigrant. She said she looked in more than a few dumpsters for things. And so they have this store where things are put in, all kinds of things, from clothing to, food, to baby supplies and all that stuff. And none of it costs anything. People in need come and take what they need. I'm sure with some provisions. Provisos. I don't know. Here's my words today. So anyway, I would recommend that, and that is a much more embellished response to the caller's question of yesterday. And I thought it was timely that I came upon that piece, which explains Fetterman's, because you might remember those Levi's ads. They were really, they were beautiful, black and white, edgy, and got a lot of attention. And then all of a sudden, this big hulking mayor of a city of all of 2,000 people is on the late night talk shows, and he's all over the place. And that helped him launch, obviously, a larger career. Runs for statewide office, bango, wins, and now running for national office. And a very unusual backstory. Okay, so there was that. I came upon a word that I thought I knew, the stochastic, STOCHASTIC, stochastic. And I remember a few years ago coming upon it for the first time and looking it up and finding out what it meant. But then when I came upon it the other day, I'd forgotten what it meant. So sometimes looking up a word for a definition doesn't get it stuck in your memory bank. So I looked it up again. And it's a word that, we got to know now. That's why I saw it a few years ago, because it's often appended to terrorism. So you see something called stochastic terrorism. And the definition, loosely, because since I'm nattering on about what the definition is that it is the targeting. If somebody is targeting a group through language, but it gives rise to violence. So this is stochastic terrorism is what we are now in the middle of. The threats of violence and intimidation, and it's stoking by elected officials at the highest levels. You could say that under the heading of stochastic terrorism, quite clearly the assault on Nancy Pelosi's husband, since she has been the target of much stochastic terrorism, demonized, constantly, year after year after year. And you'll recall the most chilling audio from the January 6th attack on our democracy, the U.S. Capitol, was, Nancy, where are you? Where's Nancy? They were looking for her. And they, if they'd found her, would have killed her. There is no doubt about that. So she escaped assassination on January 6th. And she escaped assassination less than a week ago in her own home because she was not there, but her husband was. And this kind of targeted political violence is stochastic terror, and it is what Republicans are using. And people will die. People are going to die. People, big people, are going to die. There is no doubt about that in my mind. And did you see, I thought it's an interesting little sidebar, that the man who attacked Pelosi's husband is, to use the locution that Republicans like, is an illegal alien. Yeah, he is. He is not an American citizen. He is in this country illegally. He just doesn't fit the Republican picture of an illegal alien because he's a white guy. To be an illegal alien, as you know, in Republican eyes, you have to be brown or black. He's a Canadian. And he is not legally in this country. He came and he stayed. So, and I've been seeing so many Republicans responding to this attack on the Pelosi's with, well, it just shows crime. But they don't own their crime. It's their crime. This is not the crime that they're talking about when they talk about crime. No, their kind of crime is stochastic. Their kind of crime is stochastic terror. I saw Hillary Clinton said something about the absurdity of Republicans, belittling the attack on Paul Pelosi. At the same time, they're all over the country running ads telling Americans, vote for us because crime. But when it comes to a hammer attack on an 82-year-old man in his home, that's not the crime they're talking about. That's a punchline. That's a joke. Hillary Clinton says that's hypocrisy. I think it's even more than that. So, I think I was saying yesterday, I say it all the time, that this is no ordinary time. And behaving in an ordinary way doesn't seem doesn't seem like what we should be doing. And I'm torn all the time. But it is true that we will go on and we live our lives. But if you, and I suspect you do, read a lot like I do, you come upon people who know a whole lot more about this kind of thing. The thing I'm talking about is the deconstruction of a democratic experiment, the United States of America. Something none of us ever thought we would see. And one person who I've been reading a lot is a journalist named Bryn Tannehill. And she covered war zones and failed countries, spent a lot of time in Iraq. And so when she sees parallels, that's somebody whose perspective I'm going to listen to. And here's some of what she has said. She says these two close escapes by Nancy Pelosi from obvious assassination attempts 2 times, right? And again, this is why I went nuts that the New York Times and the Washington Post did not have that as the banner, right? It barely made the front page. But to someone who has seen how political assassination is the canary in the coal mine, it's beyond the canary. It is, once that starts up, a democracy is teetering. And she says these 2 targeted assassination attempts show how close the United States is to its end as a democratic experiment. And then she says, because she's had a front row seat to this kind of violent unraveling, she said, what I know, and this is the chilling thing. She says, what I know is that the insurgent group, in this case, these Republican terrorists, the insurgent group only needs maybe 15% of the general population supporting it for it to become a self-sustaining force. Well, I got news for you. They got more than 15%. They got easily 40% of Americans. And they don't even need that many to create the kind of domestic terror and intimidation that leads to the unraveling. And from her perspective, she sees that, as in Iraq, it has a lot to do with religion. Which people have the right religion? Which religion? Which religious group is supposed to be in control? Now, in our country, we were always taught no religious group gets to be in control. We have a separation of church and state. Well, that's one of the things driving the stochastic terrorists. They've lived in this country with separation of church and state, and they don't like it anymore. It ain't working for them. It has become too secularized, so it is their job to bring it back to its Christian foundation. And she points out that despite January 6th, despite the attack on Pelosi, the continuing threats against so many office holders and election workers, and go on, that next to nothing has been done to deter the would-be assassins out there. And she points out what I did the other day, that when people started showing up outside the homes of members of the Supreme Court, and one guy in particular who was wishing ill to a specific member, why, all hell broke loose. Security was immediately increased. And she says the fact is that you see that when Republicans are targeted, there is an immediate unified response from Republicans and Democrats to protect the office holder. When a Democrat is attacked, there is no such bipartisan willingness to protect. Republicans have no intention of protecting Democratic office holders because so many of them are actively engaged in the stochastic terror of making another unhinged lunatic who thinks he's a patriot kill a Democrat. And she says that this stochastic terror that we're seeing now is going to increase. It is a promise of things to come. And if the Republicans seize power, as they very well may in less than a week, she says you can be sure that they will do as little as possible to prevent, stop, or deter, or prosecute political killing. She said, in fact, if everything unravels like it unravels generally, the Department of Justice under Republicans will become a tool for imprisoning political dissidents. And it will not lift a finger to go after the terrorists. So you can say, this is unhinged. This is ridiculous. And I'm here to tell you, if you think this is not possible, then you are in denial. In denial. Listen to what this is a professor at NYU who specializes in autocratic political culture. She's somebody who spent her entire career studying authoritarian regimes. And she very clearly sees that that is what the Republican Party is intent upon. And she takes on this issue of the fact that you can't win an argument against them because they invent an entire reality. I mean, total verifiable lies. They stare right into your face and they spout lies like Trump won, right? The big lie. And what's so amazing to us is that they do it shamelessly. They double down on their lies, and they refuse to budge. In fact, well, with what happened with Paul Pelosi, my God, the news wasn't out before an entire fantasy was created by right-wing media that now lives. It lives in the hearts and minds of their wonderful base. And this professor who studies these autocrats says what we've got to understand is the lie, the ability to shamelessly assert an obvious falsehood. As she puts it, to assert a false reality in the face of empirical evidence is itself an act of power. If you do it over, and autocratic regimes know this because the people who live under them live in this state that we could, well, we have one foot well into it. This bewildering, confusing state where up is down and black is white, and well, welcome to an Orwellian universe. That's what autocracies do. And it is an exercise in brute power. It says we are above the truth. You got truth? Pah! Meaningless to us. Here is our truth. And she says the very act of the lying, the constant lying and the repetition of the lying, and then all the Republican office holders falling in line with the lie. Or if they can't repeat it, they don't call it out. They just keep quiet. That is all about flaunting the ability to get away with it. You got a problem with it? What you gonna do? So this kind of serial lying is emblematic of any authoritarian government, as is the abandonment of all basic norms. And you have seen the Republicans do that as well. Of engaging in deliberate cruelty, which is also what they traffic in. Shamelessly. And what it is, she said, and what they are doing is declaring their total impunity. Oh, you little liberals, you crying, whining that we are being nice or we're not telling the truth. Yeah, so what? If you remember this, that those lies are acts of power. It is chilling. And I will defer to the professor. She says that's what they are, and I suspect she sure as hell is right. That's the first time anybody ever explained it. Yeah. So, I have I've been wanting to talk about the growing anti-Semitism. I mentioned it, but I do have to. I want to underscore that any Jew in this country who pals around or in any way aids and abets the Republican Party now is an idiot, is a lemming, is delusional, and I would say a betrayer of their own people. I never in my life have experienced the mainstreaming of Jew hate, and I'm 3/4 of a century old. And I must say, the speed at which it has taken off, you would have thought that the massacre at Tree of Life here might have slowed it down. But no, see, with these people, that just emboldened them. It was like that was an announcement of things to come. And so anyone who is paying attention knows that the amount of just blatant anti-Semitism that you are seeing now in this country, if you care to notice it, is unprecedented. And it's coming from the Republicans. It's coming from popular culture figures like Kanye West. It's coming from the former president. It's coming from the Republican candidate for governor here. It's coming. Did you see that there was a college football game in Florida? Where did I see that? The Florida-Georgia game. And you know how they have these, it's like a ticker that goes across and tells you what's happening, or can also be used for advertising. And at that Florida-Georgia game, more than once, anti-Semitic messages were played in that huge stadium. I mean, the place was packed. And how are you able to do that? I mean, the people who own the stadium say that we're appalled. Yeah, everybody's always appalled. And then there were banners put over highway overpasses, all over the country, saying things like, end Jewish supremacy in America, honk if you know it's the Jews, Kanye was right, on and on and on. And you can't keep up with it anymore. Can't keep up with it. And it's, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, when the Republicans take over the House of Representatives very soon, in all likelihood, her good friend, Nick Fuentes, just openly says Jews have to get the hell out. Get the fuck out of here. I piss on your Talmud. She is a respected Republican national office holder. And what are you hearing in terms of condemnation of this from the Republicans? What are you hearing? Because if you're hearing anything, I want whatever hearing aid you're using. Because it's crickets. And that kind of failure to respond normalizes, of course, anti-Semitism. Normalizes violence. And that's what they're doing. And the replacement theory is a big part of this. It's what drove the murderer here at Tree of Life. The idea that Jews control the world and Jews are taken over by getting black and brown people, I guess, to come across our borders and take away white people's jobs. That's what these people believe. Wow. And people are swallowing this and then going out and killing Jews, as here, killing blacks, as the guy who drove over 100 miles to get to a place where there were enough black people and shot up that grocery store in Buffalo. He wanted to go for the blacks. Then there was a guy who shot up, what was it, a Walmart in Texas or something, and killed a ton of, it was in El Paso. In El Paso, killed 23, mostly brown people. So there you have the triumvirate, the Jews on top, bringing in these blacks and browns to destroy the whites, who apparently were ordained by the Lord Almighty to be on the top of the pyramid, always. And I'm going to try to get, there's a scholar of this named Mark Barenbaum. I'm going to try to see if I can get him on the show. I have some connection, but he's a very busy man these days. And he has made clear that American Jews are in danger, because he says Jews are always in danger when a society becomes unstable. And we are truly unstable society. And it only makes sense that Jews are being targeted in this country as they have not before, because that's the way the script always reads. And he acknowledges that it's probably going to be quicker and harder to stop this because, of course, of the internet, because of social media. And, you know, the fact that a billionaire man-child can now own one of the biggest platforms in which people are able to say what they want to say, and he's for removing the floodgates. So, Jews who are not aware or focused on what is going on now are really in dreamland. I was talking last night to someone whose focus is the Holocaust. And she was reading an excerpt of a diary written by a 12-year-old boy in a little town in Poland, I believe 1930, forget what, 30-something. And he was talking about, it was already beyond where he was ever going to escape, he or his family. And it is the most chilling, these fragments that exist, these little diaries that have been found. That little kid's diary ends literally in mid-sentence. Ends. So, I just want, I want people to wake the fuck up. I don't know what it is we do, but this is about, what we need to be aware of is that we are heading, no matter what happens on Tuesday, we are heading into a terrifying time in this country. Because, again, as the journalist Tannehill said, all you need is about 15% of a population to create an ongoing terroristic presence. And we've got a lot more than that. And we've got aiders and abettors in the highest positions in the country. It's not anyone who thinks it is not like Germany in the 30s is, again, delusional. And this sense that somehow we've got what? How are we going to control it? How are we going to turn it back? What are we going to do? Margaret says she's getting a gun. Well, I don't know. I would argue that the second Civil War has begun. There's not going, I mean, I don't know what history will write because we don't know how this one's going to end. But it's essentially, it's the same stuff happening again. And this time there's a different environment. But basically you got the same unbelievable haters. They're white and they're Christian. And I guess I want to know what's with the Christian churches. Because this movement is using the name. It's a white Christian nationalist movement. The Catholic Church is, I would argue, all over the place on it. Liking it when it's like, abortion. Not so sure when it's immigration. And the Protestant churches, I don't know. Well, look, I might have to take a break because my sense is that all I'm doing is the same show every day, every time. Like some modern day Cassandra or, guy with a sandwich board. The end is near. And it's, I don't think that it's helpful. In as much as people need to wake up, I'm more than happy to try. But I feel like it's getting close to a time for action. And words, yes, can be like action. Very much so. Words have power. But I feel like I'm not doing anything. And I'm not sure quite what needs to be done. I know we need to take care of each other. And I know that if black people and brown people and Jewish people and gay people don't see that we are all potential victims of this movement that's going on now, and don't unify, then we'll be deserving of whatever fate awaits. Guys, I know I've got a few more minutes left, but I'm out. I'm out. I've exhausted myself. And I see that the day is a beautiful one, and I am going to do what I find it difficult to do, but damn it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to enjoy the natural world in as much as it provides comfort and solace, because it does. Because the man-made world right now is absolutely terrifying to me. Okay, sorry. I should call my shrink. Do enjoy this strange, beautiful weekend, and don't try to think about climate change, which is probably at the base of it, because it sort of intrudes on the enjoyment of it, right? So that's it. That's it from me. Spread the word. Spread the word. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.